Hi, this is Tara McGillicuddy, and this is a podcast episode of ADHD Support Talk Radio about ADHD and sleep with Dr. Roberto Olivardia, which originally aired in January of 2011. Take a listen. It's a great episode.
Hello, and welcome to ADHD Support Talk. This is your host, Tara McGillicuddy, and I am an ADHD support mentor, and I am also the founder and director of ADDclasses.com. And at ADDclasses.com, we provide virtual help and education to people affected by attention deficit disorder, ADD and ADHD. And you can learn more about ADDclasses.com by going to www.addclasses.com. And today I have with me Dr. Roberto Olivardia, and we're going to be talking about ADHD and sleeping problems. But before I welcome Roberto, Dr. Olivardia, I have a couple of announcements to make about ADD classes. Our program, Adult ADD Boot Camp, begins on February 3rd, and just a reminder that for our ADHD Support Talk listeners, we are offering a $50 off coupon for the basic track of the Adult ADD Boot Camp. And to get the $50 off, all you need to do is enter the coupon code LINDA11, LINDA11. And also our early bird offer expires this Thursday the 20th. So just go to www.adultaddbootcamp.com. And I actually have a really exciting announcement about ADDclasses.com. On February 15th, we have Dr. Edward Hallowell doing an open Q&A about ADHD. So I'm really excited about that, and registration, it's going to be a free teleseminar with the rest of our teleseminars. You can ask questions beforehand, and Dr. Hallowell will be answering them. And registration for that teleseminar opens on January 19th, and you can sign up by going to www.addclasses.com. And I think that's about it for my announcements. And for January, I'm continuing the theme of making changes. Beginning of first week, we had Dr. Ari Tuckman on, and we were talking about resolutions. Last week, we had Rhonda Stone on, and we were talking about staying on track with exercise. And today, we're going to be talking about sleep issues because a lot of people don't realize it, but your sleep affects just about everything you do, especially with ADHD. If you're trying to make changes, trying to do New Year's resolutions, sleep is really going to impact, your success or your problems with your making changes. And with that, I would like to welcome Dr. Roberto Olivardia. So welcome, Dr. Olivardia.
Oh, glad to be here. Thank you for having me. Please call me Roberto.
Okay, Roberto. And Roberto, before we get started talking about sleep and ADHD, can you tell our listeners a little bit about yourself, or as much as you'd like to tell us about yourself?
Sure. I am a clinical instructor in the Department of Psychology at Harvard Medical School, and I have a private practice in a suburb of Boston, Massachusetts, in a town called Arlington, and I specialize in the treatment of many things, including obsessive-compulsive disorder, body image issues, and eating disorders, but also a significant number of my clients are people who have ADHD and or learning disabilities.
Oh, welcome. I'm so glad you've joined us. And like I said to our listeners, we're going to be talking about ADHD and sleep. And, today we're going to be talking about the challenges associated with sleep and some of the problems. But on March 1st, Roberto is actually going to be giving a teleseminar about sleep through ADDclasses.com. And then we're going to be talking about some of the solutions and how to work with sleep problems when you have ADHD. But maybe we can just get started. What are some of the problems people with ADHD face or deal with when it comes to sleep issues?
Well, I would start off by saying that it's interesting that I probably don't know anyone with ADHD who doesn't have an issue with sleep. That when you ask parents of ADHD children or teens, adults with ADHD, this is a topic that is very much the core of what they're going through. We categorize the issues of sleep in basically 3 or 4 different categories. The first is issues with falling asleep. I heard a quote, and I don't remember where it was from, but it basically said that to someone with ADHD, it involves that sleep is basically sitting in a dark room waiting for nothing to happen. And that's kind of what it's like, is the idea of going to sleep means that your mind has to be shut off, that your mind has to basically be surrendered and let go in order to be able to fall into sleep. And if your mind is racing and if you have a million thoughts going on in your head and if you feel this burst of energy, it's very difficult to fall asleep because your body is so aroused. Many people with ADHD, and this has been shown even in biological studies, have found that their circadian rhythms are actually a little bit different than people without ADHD. So most people without ADHD tend to get tired when the sun goes down and tend to wake up when the sun goes up. And if you ask many people with ADHD, they would often say that their ideal hours of sleep would be from 2 a.m. to 10 a.m. And that's actually been proven in sleep studies that show actually a delayed shift in people's circadian rhythms that actually show that their mind at 10 p.m. sometimes is actually becoming very alert and very energized. And so many people with ADD will feel this burst of energy at a time when they're supposed to be going to sleep. So they'll have a lot of trouble getting to sleep. And then when they get to sleep, there are a number of individuals which will have trouble staying asleep or having a restful sleep, and that's sort of the next category. And so we see a host of different sleep disorders, things like obstructive sleep apnea, which many people will associate with people who are overweight or obese, and that certainly is a risk factor. But you can also have sleep apnea due to anatomical issues, such as a deviated septum in your nose or enlarged tonsils. And many people with ADHD have issues with sleep apnea, with restless leg syndrome, sleepwalking, sleep talking. And then there's the issue of waking up, which many parents of ADHD kids will tell you is literally like trying to wake up the dead. That getting out of bed, even if one has slept an ample amount of sleep, there is something that's just very, very difficult about getting up and starting in the morning, almost like the brain is just not aroused enough to do that. And then the fourth category is what we call more of a disorder of vigilance throughout the day, that a lot of people with ADHD will talk about having almost what we call narcoleptic episodes, where narcolepsy is a sleep disorder where people will have these sudden attacks of sleepiness. But with ADHD individuals, they'll talk about that in the face of not having enough stimulation. So if they're in a class, for example, where the teacher is very engaging, they'll be awake and totally focused in there, but the second things get very boring, they could literally just fall into a sleep to the point where they're dreaming or drooling, and it's very, very difficult to keep their eyes open if they're bored, to the point that it overcomes them, it overwhelms them. So those are sort of the four major categories that we see, but it tends to affect, again, I don't know anyone with ADHD that doesn't have some issue with sleep.
Yeah, and I have ADHD myself, and I work with
as
clients.
do I do as well.
Yep. I have to say, number one, getting to sleep, and I definitely relate to that 10 p.m. thing. A lot of times, that's when I'm at my best. That's when, I have the energy. And it's funny, my husband is the exact opposite. At 10 p.m., he's ready for bed, and he's one of those people that goes to bed, might talk for 2 minutes, and then he's out, which makes me crazy. And I also have that getting up in the morning, and my husband tries not to look at me when I walk across the room because I guess I growl because I'm not fully awake, but I definitely relate to that. And getting to sleep, I think not only is it just associated with ADHD that's common, a lot of the things that we do as people with ADHD can make it harder to get to sleep too. We have behaviors that really get in the way.
Definitely, and as I mentioned, I also have ADHD and could relate. I mean, at 10, 11 p.m., that's when I'm my most creative and very awake. And I think there's also something behavioral about it because I almost force myself to be so tired so that when I go to bed, it doesn't take me, like I'm almost so exhausted that I just basically fall asleep. And I think that part of that is that if I have too much time where I'm awake, if I go to bed and for some people, if it takes them 5 minutes to get to sleep, for me in that 5-minute period of time, I could be thinking about, I don't know, a million different things, a project I want to do, a song in my head, something I ate, a restaurant I want to go to, and now I'm awake again. But your point is an excellent one, which is absolutely people with ADHD are drawn towards very stimulating behaviors. So going on the Internet, which is very stimulating, playing video games, watching very intense action movies, or engaging in other, I've had individuals who do their exercise and working out at 10, 11 o'clock at night. And so any of these behaviors, whereas for some people have an easier time to kind of come down from that, but for someone with ADHD, when we hit a level of stimulation, our brain doesn't want to discharge that so quickly. And so you're right, it makes it very difficult. And so one of the strategies we have is to have people kind of try to distance themselves from some of those high stimulating behaviors shortly before they're going to bed.
And just like going on the Internet, the computer, to think, okay, that's not that stimulating, but it can be really stimulating to the brain. It's okay, one more email, or I'm going to play another round of Bejeweled or whatever the games are people are playing, and it stimulates. But in the email, sometimes you might get I have to tell myself, okay, I'm not going to read emails by a certain point. I have an iPhone, which I admit I bring to bed, which for me, and it sounds crazy, but it actually helps because I'm not getting out of bed and going and sitting at my computer and spending 2 more hours. But sometimes just reading the email stimulates me and gets all these thoughts going, so I have to, be careful about that. It's just with ADD, it can take a minor thing that gets your brain going where the average person that wouldn't happen. So we do have to be really careful about what we do.
Very careful. I mean, I've had a common scene in my house is my wife and I are watching a movie or television on the couch, and I'm starting to nod off, and I'm getting very sleepy, and she says, Roberto, go to bed. You're tired, or, the movie ends. I'm like, yeah, and I'm exhausted. I mean, all I want to do is go to sleep, and I'll go, let me just shut off the computer, the computer that's in the study. I go to shut it off, and I'll think, like you said, let me just check this one email. I check the one email, and then my wife's wondering where I am. She comes in the study, and I'm fully awake. I mean, you wouldn't have even known that I was drooling on the couch. And she's like, what's going – I mean, it's literally that's what it does to our brain. It's like a switch now that once that stimulation is there, it's on. And so I know better now that either my wife just has to shut off the computer because it's just too tempting, or before I even get on the couch, I shut off the computer so that because I know once I'm on the couch, there's something about being on the couch that actually I can sort of surrender and sort of let go of that to make that one less thing I have to do. But the Internet is very stimulating. I mean, the idea of clicking, and the novelty of all different pages and YouTube videos, and it's just constant just stimulation, basically, for the brain. Absolutely.
Yeah, and I've gotten the habit. My bathroom is at the back of the house. My bedroom's at the front. My office is right, near the bathroom. So when I get up to go to the bathroom late at night or in the middle of the night, I have to force myself to not go in the office. Sometimes I will shut the door because it's like you said, it stimulates the brain, and I could be up from 1 to 4 a.m. working, and that's not good.
Definitely, and the environmental that's part of absolutely knowing that even just the environmental trigger of that, just being in a room, my study is a room where I do so much thinking and there's so much productivity, and that literally just being in that room can cultivate that. And so you're right. I mean, even something, it seems kind of silly sometimes for some people to think about, like, I have to shut the door so I don't even look at that room, but that is exactly what you have to do.
Yep. And then the next thing you talked about was not being able to stay asleep. That's another common problem for people with ADHD.
Yes, definitely. That there is a number of my patients, I've actually recommended them to get sleep studies, and it's astounding all the data that people can get from a sleep study. I highly recommend for anyone who has an issue where they're sleeping 8 hours but they're waking up and not feeling rested. Certainly if they are snoring, that's often a sign of sleep apnea or some sleep issue, and a lot of times it's not the person who would know that, but their partner that would know that. But I've had patients who get sleep studies done and they find out that they have severe sleep apnea, or that they are not hitting REM sleep. So when we sleep, we have stage 1, 2, 3, 4, and then REM sleep where we do our dreaming, and then we go cycle back up, stage 4, 3, 2, 1, and then we sort of continue through that cycle. And we're stage 1 and 2 are kind of the not very deep levels of sleep, and 3 and 4 are deep levels. And some of my ADHD patients, when doing a sleep study, found that they were never hitting stage 4 sleep or REM sleep. So they were going stage 1, 2, maybe 3, and then cycling just in those 3 stages. So there's a lot of data that can come from having sleep studies and could help explain why people don't feel that restful sleep. A lot of physical activity that sometimes our bodies, particularly people who are of the hyperactive subtype of ADHD, our bodies don't move just because don't stop moving just because we're sleeping. That high degree of either restless leg syndrome or things like sleepwalking, or just a lot of moving in the bed that could produce a lot of restlessness in sleep. And so really trying to pay very close attention to how one sleeps and the position that best can help that. Absolutely.
Yeah. And myself, I thought I was one of those people who slept 8 hours, had restful sleep, and about a year ago I bought something called a body media or body bug, and it goes on my left arm, and what it does is it measures how many steps I'm taking a day, how many calories I've burned, and it also measures how you sleep. And I was just amazed. I thought that I was going to bed and sleeping 8 hours because I go from the last time I remember looking at the alarm clock to, when I looked at it when I woke up. And I'm like somebody who I get up on my own. I don't need an alarm clock. So I thought I was getting at least hours of sleep, 8 hours of sleep, and I wasn't. And then it was like really weird looking at it breaks it down. There were some times where it says I was taking steps in the middle of the night, and I'm pretty sure I'm not a sleepwalker. I don't think I've done that in years, but it was really interesting. I'm somebody who, doesn't have to get up by an alarm clock, doesn't have a set schedule. So if I really wasn't sleeping 8 hours, and more than likely I wasn't getting, the type of sleep I needed, I'd say there's a lot of people, especially with ADHD, who probably doing the same thing. And it was really interesting. That was just a thing on my arm, which, just gave a minor look into, like, my sleep, where, I'm sure the sleep studies are going to get, really tell you. And because I think you said it, Chad, you had a sleep study, and you were surprised what it told you also.
Absolutely. I myself, I am a bevy of sleep disorders. I have sleep apnea. Basically everything I've described. When I get bored, as my friends in high school and college could tell you, I will be out. Literally, like I almost look drugged. And so I have to be stimulated to keep myself, going. But yes, I was someone who I was a very bad snorer. I've been my entire life, basically. And it was only when I had a patient with ADHD that had a sleep study done and found out that he had severe sleep apnea. And I read sleep apnea, and I thought, this is interesting. I could identify with some of this. And there was a lot I couldn't identify with, in that I'd never had morning headaches and never had issues with depression or a lot of the things that a lot of people with sleep apnea have. But I thought, let me get a sleep study done. Unbelievably interesting. I had the sleep study, and basically they tell you if you have 20 what they call apneas or hypopneas, which are times that either you're not breathing or where your oxygen levels are extremely desaturated, if you have 20 or more of those in an hour, that would qualify for the diagnosis of sleep apnea. And if they see that in the sleep study, they will come in with a CPAP, which is a machine basically that you put on your face and it blows oxygen into your nose. And they will try that out. And so I'm on this bed thinking, I'm not going to fall asleep with all these wires attached to me. And lo and behold, 2 hours later, someone comes in with a CPAP, and I think, why are you bringing that in? I haven't even been asleep. And they said, actually, you've been asleep for 2 hours.
Oh,
and
wow.
I thought, what? And they said, yep, you've been basically in stage 1, 2 sleep for 2 hours. You've never even hit deep sleep. So to make a long story short, I got the sleep report, and my doctor, I have the distinction that my doctor said of 20-something years of her doing this, I had the most hypopneas of anyone she's ever seen. And I said, yes, when I aim for the best. So I had 98 times in an hour that I wasn't either breathing or that my oxygen levels were desaturated, which is severe sleep apnea. And it turns out I had a deviated septum. I actually got that fixed a week ago. And I have enlarged tonsils. I mean, my anatomy is apparently designed for sleep apnea. Lucky me. But I was so grateful to have had that diagnosis and to get treatment for it. So that was a total wake-up call. And the scary part about this is not only just about sleep and ADHD, but my doctor told me that what it does to your heart when your body feels as if it's suffocating when you're not breathing and when your oxygen levels are so low that I'm 38 years old, and she said if this were continued to be not treated, by the time I was 50, I could have a major heart attack, a fatal heart attack.
Oh, wow.
Because of the damage. And luckily, I've ran all the cardiac tests, and there's no damage to my heart because I'm still young. But over time, what happens is that your heart is pumping so quickly during those moments that eventually it can't repair itself. And when you hear of people who drop dead at like 50, 55, and you're thinking, what's going on? Sometimes it could be that. And I thought, wow, that's pretty scary. So I took it very, very seriously.
Yep. I was listening to a morning radio show recently, and Dr. Oz was on, and they were asking him, what's the biggest change people should make in 2011 or, something to that effect. And he said people need to sleep. And it makes sense for what you were saying, that, people don't even realize how much damage not getting enough sleep or not getting the right amount of sleep can cause. I mean, you just, said that at 50, if you kept doing things the way you were doing with sleeping, that you'd probably have a heart attack. So it's really important. And getting back to the sleep study, I remember years ago a neurologist suggested I had to have one done. And I said, oh, no, I won't be able to sleep. I'm going to be too anxious, blah, blah, blah. So I never had one done. My sleep's improved since then. I've made changes, lost a little bit of weight. So I am sleeping a lot better, but I think that's something that a lot of people are anxious about, is I'm not going to be able to sleep. And you were somebody who thought that too, but you got in there and realized you were asleep. So
exactly. I mean, I told them I remember I got to the sleep lab at 9 p.m. and I said, I just want to let you know my normal time to go to sleep is 2 a.m. I said I am not going to be able to fall asleep, especially with all these wires on me in a strange bed. And you fall asleep. I mean, because honestly, what helped is that I had nothing to do. I mean, I didn't have the internet. I didn't have my music. So I'm just laying there in a bed. Eventually, you'll fall asleep. And I highly, highly, highly recommend people to get a sleep study, because especially for folks with ADHD, there's this kind of reciprocal relationship that when you're not people with ADHD have issues with sleep, and then when you're not sleeping, that continues, that exacerbates your ADHD traits and symptoms, so that when you're not sleeping well, even for people without ADHD, your focus, your concentration, your ability to think through decisions, impulsivity, all of that will be revved up. All your ADHD symptoms get revved up when you're not sleeping well. So it's so important.
And it sounds like from the 4 categories you listed that each of these problems can, they relate to each other and make the other ones worse. If you're not getting to sleep, if you're not staying asleep, that makes sense. You're not going to be able to wake up.
Exactly.
So it's a snowball effect with these sleeping issues.
It is, and I have to say, when it was life-changing because I use a CPAP to go to sleep, and because for me there was so many anatomical issues that to get surgery on all of them, that the effectiveness rate would have been quite low. And I hated it at first, but it's actually something that I really have grown not only used to, but really like a lot, because I'm guaranteed to get a good sleep with knowing I'm going to be getting enough oxygen while I'm breathing, while I'm sleeping. But it was literally life-changing. I can't even tell you. I mean, after using that and thinking, oh, my gosh, this is how people feel when they get a good night's sleep. It was the first time in my life that I woke up in the morning and actually felt rested. In my life, I have never had that feeling I never understood that when people said they wake up and they feel, they're ready for the day and they feel rested. I hate it. I mean, I'm still not a morning person. Like, it didn't change I still have ADD. I'm still, but it was significantly different. I mean, significantly different. And also, interestingly, I mean, there's a lot of research, too, about sleep and weight in terms of sleep deprivation also enables our body to hold on to body fat. And I lost 10 pounds without doing anything for the first month of just using the CPAP simply because I was just sleeping better. Yeah, it was amazing.
Wow. So I know that I've heard of studies that, not getting enough sleep, you tend to eat more, not pay attention to what you're eating, and people who are addicted to carbohydrates. And I heard that, but I never heard just the act of sleeping, getting enough sleep, oxygenates your cells, all that. So that's interesting too.
Yeah, when we are sleep deprived, there's a hormone called leptin that gets elevated in our body, and what leptin does, it's sort of our body's own survival mechanism. Leptin actually holds on to storages of body fat. And it's basically Mother Nature's way of saying, well, if we're not sleeping, it's almost like our brain is thinking, if we're not sleeping, it must be because a higher order need is threatened. And the only thing that we need more than sleep is food and water. And so if we're not sleeping, it must mean that we need food. And so what's happening is our body now is, and also we're burning more calories and burning more energy if we're awake, that our body actually holds on to fat more when we're sleep deprived. And like you said, when we're not as alert or focused, we're probably going to make different choices about what we eat, how we eat. And with people with ADHD, I mean, I've talked about that in the past, about ADHD and eating issues or eating disorders, and there's a lot about that as well. But if you then are eating unhealthy food and your body's holding on to that fat, it's almost like a double whammy in a lot of ways. So there's definitely, one of the ways for people who are interested in weight loss that doctors will say is make sure you're getting plenty of sleep.
Yeah, and that's something that the average person, or your average person with ADD listening, probably is not aware of, that in order to lose weight and be healthy, in addition to exercising and eating the right foods, you need to sleep enough and get the right type of sleep. That's amazing that you lost, 10 pounds just from sleeping.
Literally doing nothing. I know. It was the easiest 10 pounds to lose.
Yeah, I'm telling you, if people hear that they can lose weight just by sleeping, somebody, that's amazing.
Yeah, I mean, we wouldn't associate doing nothing, well, see, I think I should also point out that that's something I've had to even frame for myself, is that sleep is not doing nothing. Like, part of it is a lot of people with ADHD, and I definitely include myself, don't view sleep as a productive use of time. I can I can think of 10 other things that I could do that I feel are more productive, and I've had to and I still work at this. I have to really work at, sleep is a very productive use of my time, and in fact, it will make all the other parts of my day even that much more productive, because if I'm sleeping well, then I'm sharper with all those other things as opposed to dragging. And that's something I still work with, because we tend not to respect sleep, and as a culture we don't respect sleep. Because again, this affects even folks without ADHD, but as a culture we want to do more, and the idea of doing, quote unquote, doing nothing, like sleeping, feels like, but it's that actually there's a lot happening when we're sleeping.
Yeah, and I think definitely people with ADD or anyone else needs to buy into the fact that, sleeping is not only a necessity, but like you said, it's good use of your time. It's very good use of your time. I mean, I know I'm more productive. I mean, there are times when I don't get enough sleep. My sleep used to be awful. I mean, I used to pull all-nighters, be up 36 hours. I mean, it was just awful. Now I'm on a fairly normal sleeping, pattern, and I get more done. I feel better. So, I can really say that, sleeping is something that it's good use of my time. There's still, and we still have problems sometimes. I still have problems from time to time with sleeping, but it's getting to normal, and I think that's one of the best changes I made in my life, is to get enough sleep and get good sleep, and it sounds like you did too, and
Definitely.
And you also have clients you've worked with studies, there's data that supports this too, so that's great. We are actually at the end of the half hour, so this is very interesting. I know I learned a lot about sleep. I got a lot out of this. I really want to thank you for coming on this afternoon, and as I said before, you will be at addclasses.com on March 1st, and you will be giving a free teleseminar about sleep. And today we talked a little bit more about the problems associated with sleep, and the teleseminar is going to be a little more detailed. It's going to talk more about solutions. So thank you once again, Roberto.
Oh.
And, Roberto, if people want to get in touch with you, do you have contact information that you want to get out?
Sure. Probably the best way is my email address. I don't have a website currently. My email is Roberto_Olivardia at HMS, like Harry, Mary, Sally, .harvard.edu. And my last name is OLIV as in Victor, ARD as in Daniel, IA. And people can feel free to email me. And thank you so much for having me on the show. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, thank you so much. And everyone have a great afternoon, or if you're listening to the archive, have a great day or evening. And thank you once again. Have a great day, everyone. Goodbye.
What does it really mean to have faster internet?